Hello and welcome to the St. Louis Wind Symphony podcast. My name is Matt McKeever.
And I'm Lisa McMahon.
And we're both members of the St. Louis Wind Symphony. In this podcast, Lisa and I will highlight, discuss, and listen to pieces that will be featured on upcoming Wind Symphony concerts.
Established in 1998, the St. Louis Wind Symphony is a nonprofit, all-volunteer concert band dedicated to preserving and performing quality wind band music, supporting music education, and commissioning new works.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the St. Louis Wind Symphony podcast.
Hello and welcome to the St. Louis Wind Symphony podcast. My name is Lisa McMahon.
I'm Matt McKeever.
And we have two guests with us today. We have Neil Flanagan and Jesse Flanagan. Hey.
Hello.
And they're going to be talking with us a little bit about the percussion section. I do want to mention we have a concert coming up on February the 9th at 3 o'clock p.m. and it is at the 560 Music Center on 560 Trinity Avenue. You can also find information for that concert at our website, which is stlwinsim.org, and also on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. We are all over the internet. But today, kind of the third in our series where we're talking about different sections that make up the Wind Symphony. We did one that spoke of the instruments that are in the woodwind section. The next one spoke about instruments that are in our brass section. Neil and Jesse today are here to talk to us a little bit about the percussion section. So let's dive into that. Tell us about the percussion section. What is back there? What is happening in the back of the band? Things that you can tell us anyway. Yeah.
Sure. When I was teaching elementary music, I told my students that the percussion section is anything that you can hit, scrape, or shake to make a sound. So really, we've got three kind of basic groups of instruments in the back. We have our drums, which would be timpani, bass drum, snare drum. We have our keyboard instruments, which would include xylophone, marimba, bells, and also the piano. And then we have our accessory instruments, which would be tambourine, maracas, cymbals, basically anything that you would hold directly in your hand to create the sound.
All right. Yeah. How about, what's the role, I'm biased in this question, what's the role of piano back there in the percussion section besides sarcastic comments during rehearsal?
The piano is really just adding a brightness to the percussion section. Most of the instruments in the percussion section are more just a darker tone. You have dark sounds coming from marimba. The bells and xylophone do kind of add a brightness to the section, but the piano has something that the rest of the section can't really do, is add resonance to the keyboard instruments. And as well, the piano is going to add, they can play notes faster than a lot of the xylophones can do. They can play more notes at the same time as well. So.
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit, just speaking of mallet instruments, can you guys talk a little bit about what the different mallets will do? I know that there's mallets of different hardness and softness and material and everything. Can you guys talk a little bit about what that does and why we have all that stuff back there?
Yeah, so each mallet is going to give you a different timbre and a different, some of them are going to be more legato, some are going to be staccato. If you have brass mallets on a bell set, it's going to be very bright, very shimmery versus plastic mallets. And then the shape of each mallet kind of makes a difference too.
The shape, like the shape of the head of the mallet itself?
Yeah, they'll just give you a different articulation.
So with snare drum sticks in particular, if you have, I'm not sure how to describe that, more of a globe shape, it's going to give you, there's more surface area contacting the head. So it's usually going to give you a darker timbre, whereas if you have the tip of the stick that's more acorn shaped, there's less surface area hitting the drum, so it's going to give you a brighter timbre. Same thing would happen with mallets as well. You can use different types of, you have yarn mallets, but even the type of yarn that's used, is it wool, is it a poly blend, that's going to totally change your timbre as well. So it's kind of fun as a percussionist to try and find what's needed from this specific section of this song. Because if you're playing bells on one piece, you're going to require a totally different type of mallet on the same instrument for a different piece. And I guess it would kind of be, you could kind of equate that to like trumpet players. They'll have more than one type of instrument sitting in front of them. But there's, they'll have a B flat trumpet or a C trumpet or even different type of mouthpieces.
Mouthpieces or mutes
or
mutes.
whatever.
So
that one instrument can give you a variety of different sounds, and it's kind of fun to experiment and try different things.
So who decides what kind of mallet is used on what? Is that your call? Is that the call of the conductor? Or is it kind of a weird collaboration of both?
I think we usually start with it, and every once in a while the conductor will say, hey, can you use the black mallet? And we're like, well, that means nothing.
Yeah.
So,
We initiate, okay, we'll
Sure,
listen to the song,
sure.
we'll try to find a good recording of the piece, and we'll say, all right, I think we're probably using something like this.
Okay.
And then from there, it's kind of up to the conductor to say, like, I need something louder or heavier
Yeah.
or brighter, and we'll try to find an implement that suits that purpose. And, we'll mix and match. We'll go through three or four different implements and say, okay, we think this probably sounds the best for this part.
Do you ever change what you're going to use based on what you hear in rehearsal? So let's say you're listening to a part, maybe you haven't had a chance to listen to a recording or whatever, you get into a rehearsal and you realize, oh, that's with all of the clarinets, so maybe I can change that. Like, do you ever make decisions on the fly based on what you guys are hearing back there?
yeah, definitely. And then also, when you're moving from a rehearsal to a performance, which might be in a different venue, and I like to have a bunch of bass drum mallets in front of me because the bass drum is always different no matter where you go. And so just depending on how it's tuned, how big it is, whether it's suspended, whether it's, I don't know what, not suspended.
Yeah.
Bigger's not always better on the bass drum, right?
No, it's mostly a tuning issue.
Yeah,
sure.
That makes sense.
Well, and Lisa, you mentioned that, like, well, which instrument are you playing with? If you're playing a triangle while the brass is playing, you're going to have to use something heavy. But if you're playing
the biggest triangle,
the biggest triangle you can find, there's the dinner triangle, right?
That's it.
But as if you're just playing along with the flutes, you want something light that's going to complement what the flutes are doing in front of you.
So one of the things I really like about the percussion section is, well, as it's compared to like the wind section, like there's a pretty set instrumentation in the wind section generally. With percussion, it could be anything. I mean, anything like you said you can hit or scrape or anything like that.
The world is
what
an
are,
instrument.
What are some of the
world.
craziest percussion instruments you guys have played that someone wouldn't normally think, oh, I didn't know that was actually used in music or used in a percussion section?
Can't see it, but they both just lit
I don't
up.
know. I don't know if you consider it a percussion instrument, but I played turntables for marching band one year.
Oh.
So
Now, how many turntables did you have?
I had two.
And a microphone? Two
No, I did
turntables
not.
and a... No.
Just a mean set of headphones.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
I've never actually used it in a song, but when you're going through Steve Weiss's catalog online, you can see some pretty crazy things. I think one of the funniest instrument is the udders. It's
the what?
Yeah, they're called udders. Yeah, and it's pieces of rubber that are rubber banded together, and it looks like a set of udders. And when you shake them, it gives you that kind of warbly, squeaky sound that you might have from a. I'm trying to think what that instrument is called. It's a long plastic tube that when you turn it over, it goes, right?
It's a toy,
well,
right?
the udders do kind of the same thing. So we've got all sorts of stuff to play with. And
These calls for that.
I don't know.
Well, Lisa, I know you're a fan of some interesting percussion.
I
remember
am, yes.
the tubes.
Oh yeah.
Plastic whirly tubes, that's right. I think the technical name for them is whirlies. That's what they, or sound tubes, I guess is what they're called. And I as a director like to program things that call for weird percussion and amplified lion's roar and nonsense like that.
We're doing a piece right now where everybody in the whole wind section has an egg shaker, and everybody's playing an egg shaker. So I had to buy 50 egg shakers.
Love it.
At Tantera, I found it. There was two different pieces from two different bands that called for the woodwinds to put down their instruments and snap to kind of mimic rain falling. And I thought that such a beautiful sound that you can't create from an instrument itself. You can only do that through snapping. Yeah. So
that's really cool. That's really cool. And Jesse, that kind of goes into our next point of your new role with the Wind Symphony. Can you talk about that a little bit? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm coordinating the percussion section now. I get all of the music and I put each piece into an Excel file and write in which instrument or which.
Like how many players you need?
So like what instruments are needed and what can be covered by one person.
So your job is to look at maybe 10 different percussion parts and say, what is the least amount of people that I need to make this happen, right?
And then I search for the people.
Yeah.
And we have a super great section right
Yes,
now.
we do.
We're so
We're real
excited
happy
about
with
it.
the people that are back there. We're all true percussionists. Like, we're trying to get away from, hey, this person doesn't play mallets or this person only plays snare drum. Like, we have all the people back there play everything, and they play it all really well.
There's a lot of hustling
So
going on
excited.
Yes.
yeah, right now,
Yes.
which is cool, which is
Yeah.
really cool to see.
And then when I'm divvying up the parts, I'm trying to put everyone on something different all the time. I'm trying to give each person a mallet part, each person a snare drum or bass drum part, each person a timpani part, just so that we're not stuck
Sure.
in one role.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Band directors do the same thing with their own groups because they want to make sure that their percussionists are well rounded as well. So it becomes a challenge for the director or for the section leader to figure that out. But it becomes exciting for us as a musician too. Like, okay, so I'm on snare drum for this piece, which is an instrument across the room.
Sure.
But then I've got to run over and play cymbals, which is fun. It's kind of enjoyable
Yeah.
to do that. So.
That's really cool. I'm really excited to see what's going on back there, and couldn't have picked a better person for the job in my opinion. So we've talked a little bit about what the makeup of the section is. Let's do a little bit of listening. Neil, you picked this piece that we're going to listen to. What is this?
This is a piece called Stained Glass. It's written by David Gillingham. I'll be honest, I don't remember the year. I believe it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, but it's been arranged for a variety of ensembles, including marching bands who used it. But originally it was a percussion ensemble piece. It is in 3 movements, and it's supposed to be mimicking sunlight moving through stained glass in an old cathedral. Really beautiful piece.
All right, let's listen to a little bit of David Gillingham's Stained Glass.
And that was Stained Glass by David Gillingham for Percussion Ensemble. We're going to move now to some of the music that we're going to be hearing on our upcoming concert on February 9th, starting with a piece called I Hear Him by John Carnahan. It starts with percussion, so we'll dig into a little bit about why that is. There's a meaning for that.
Sure. So the subtitle for the piece is For the Maestro. I Hear Him, For the Maestro. And this piece is by John Allen Carnahan. It was written in 2011. It actually is a tribute to famed Eastman Wind Ensemble founder Frederick Fennell. And it includes a bunch of music that was very important to him and was well known and tied to him, such as Bach's Komm süßer Tod, Komm Sweet Death. That was his favorite Bach chorale. And of course, Lincolnshire Posy by Granger. Fred Fennell is pretty instrumental in making sure that this was a staple in the wind band world. Of course, the premier and go-to edition of Lincolnshire Posy is Fred Fennell's edition. First Suite in E flat for military band by Gustav Holst. The recording that Fennell did is considered the gold standard. And then there's a piece by Fennell himself called The Drummer's Heritage. You're going to hear quotations from all 4 of those pieces within I Hear Him itself. Which is really interesting. I'll talk a little bit about where the title came from in just a second, but I'm going to kick it over to Jesse and or Neil. Can you guys talk to us a little bit about what happens at the very, very beginning?
So at the beginning we start with 3 field drums, and they are all in different locations. We have this really great antiphonal thing going on. One is in the percussion section, one is off stage, and the other is over with the timpani. And they kind of drop out as we go on, and we end with just Allison back there in the percussion section on snare drum, not timpani.
So when you talk about field drum, what is a field drum as opposed to a snare drum or something else?
So originally the field drum was what they played in the field during the war.
Okay.
So it's real deep, it's got a lower tone to it, it's a lot more resonant than your normal snare drum.
The head size is usually much larger too.
Okay.
Most concert snare drums are going to be 14 inches across diameter. A field drum can be usually 15, and some are even 16 inches across. It's got a thicker head, creating a darker tone as well. So that sound's going to carry further.
Interesting. So there's 3 of them at the very beginning of this piece, because Fennell himself was a percussionist, and that will dovetail beautifully into talking about why the piece is called I Hear Him. So before his death, Fennell was very ill and probably a little bit delusional, as I can imagine happens a lot. His daughter actually tells the story that shortly before his death, he was becoming very, very agitated. Like he's lying on his deathbed, getting very, very agitated because there's no drummer. I can't hear a drummer. I can't go on without a drummer. Like as a weird foreshadowing to to going to heaven. I can't go to heaven if there's no drummer. And his daughter said, "Don't worry, Dad. Heaven's best snare drummer is on his way," which is, wow, that's kind of deep. And then apparently Fennell's last words were, "I hear him. I hear him. I'm okay." And shortly after that, he passed away. So his last words were, "I hear him," and that's where the title comes from.
I feel like you're really into band when you're
I can't die
when your last conversation is about where's the drummer?
Where's the drummer?
Is the instrumentation set?
Yeah.
And if it is, okay.
As a gigging musician, I feel like the term "where's the drummer" comes up a lot.
As a percussionist, I would imagine for you all, like that's job security, right?
True. Even in heaven.
So even in heaven, yeah. So it's just an interesting insight as to where the title came from and where Fennell's mind was, in his last moments, and just how important, I guess, good instrumentation was for him. But it is a very interesting piece, and it's a touching tribute to a very important figure in our wind ensemble literature world. And I believe, Matt, you found a recording of this piece.
I did a little searching on the YouTubes, and I found a recording of the Tamagawa High School Band playing this in Tokyo. It's actually a pretty decent recording of it, so I'm glad we can hear just a little snippet of this. We'll try to splice in a little bit of the percussion introduction. So hopefully you guys enjoy this snippet of "I Hear Him" by John Allen Carnahan.
So we just listened to a recording of I Hear Him by John Allen Carnahan. Next, we're going to talk about another selection on our February 9th concert, which is Pas Redoublé by Cesson, and it was arranged by Arthur Frackenpole in 1972. I'm going to talk a little bit about the origins of this piece, and we actually found a recording of the original version of this before the wind ensemble version came out. So Cesson originally composed this in 1887 as a piece for four-hand piano, which we had to explain to Matt is not the kind of beer that's brewed in St. Louis. So that's four hands. That's something else.
Yes.
But four-hand piano is essentially a piano duet. So four hands sitting at the same piano. And there's a difference between four-hand piano and piano duet. Piano duet implies two separate pianos. If it's written for four-hand, it's just two people sitting at the same piano with one very, very long bench. And Pas Redoublé, this particular piece, was written for four-hand piano, like I said, in 1887. The term Pas Redoublé is actually a military term, and we're going to talk a little bit in a second about what that means and what tempo that is supposed to be. But Matt found a recording of the four-hand piano arrangement of Pas Redoublé by Sanson.
Yeah, I don't know. The internet's a great thing. So, it's just a guy who posted on YouTube. He said it's a video of him performing it with himself. So we edited it together. It's interesting to see, at least for the first part that we were just listening to. The second player is doing more of just the bass and
the boom chick.
The tenor parts, yeah, and then the top part's doing all the alto and soprano parts. So it's interesting to hear it sort of, stripped down to just its bare basics, just one sound from the piano. So yeah, it's pretty cool. We'll put those together back to back with the wind ensemble recording that we listened to here in just a minute.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the terms are And Neil and Jesse, jump in at any time if you want to talk about what's happening in the percussion section with any of this, especially as we talk about faster tempos and
Sure.
what that means for you guys standing in the back of the band. So there are three terms that go along with the term pas redoublé. There's pas ordinaire, which is at about 90 beats per minute. So if you're setting up the metronome for your practice session, set it up at 90. That was considered for mid 19th century military bands. That was the ordinary tempo. That was the standard. That's kind of the tempo that we march at. But the pas redoublé was a faster marching tempo, and that's at 120. If you were going for double quick or pas de charge, that was 160. And kind of some of the controversy, well, maybe it's created wind literature nerd controversy that goes along with it, is that it was written, the term pas redoublé should be at about 120 or so, but you'll hear 10 million different recordings of this piece, and the tempo varies probably from 110 to the one that Matt found that we're going to play a little bit later. It's easily at 160. So what's happening back in the percussion section with specifically crash cymbals when it's at 160? What's
Well,
what are you
first
doing?
of all, you want to select the correct size cymbal, because this piece is playing upbeats. It's playing a lot of what the horns would be playing throughout much of the piece. So it's a good 5.5, 6 minute piece. And cymbal upbeats the whole time. So you want to get a small cymbal to lessen fatigue. Some people will actually play. They'll play up these marches. They'll use two different people on two different sets of crash cymbals. So if there's an accented note, you'd have one person playing just the accented notes on a larger set of crash cymbals, and then all the upbeats, the ands, the whole time would be played by a set of maybe 16-inch cymbals. Yeah, so
That's interesting.
I didn't know.
yeah.
I learned something today. But yeah, so the pas redoublé is actually supposed to be only about 120. But Arthur Freckenpohl, the gentleman who arranged this particular work that we're playing, recommends it to be about 144. The controversy, of course, comes in that that's not a true pas redoublé. That's something a little bit faster. So really, truly, you can find recordings of it from 110 to 160, and then of course there's a section at the end that some people will traditionally speed up because
Even
they
more.
can. Yeah, just because they can. So yeah, it's kind of an earworm by itself, and we'll talk about another piece that we're doing that is an earworm. But the melody gets in your head. Neil was just saying, I gotta remember how this one goes. I sang about 2 bars of it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that piece." It doesn't go away, and it sticks in your brain a bit. So, Matt, are we gonna play both versions?
We'll listen to a snippet of the version for 4-hand piano, and then we will listen to a version by the Navy Band, which, like Lisa said, is very quick, but just to give you an idea as far as where they could possibly take this. So we hope you enjoy it. And you just heard Pas Redoublé, another piece that we're going to be playing on our February 9th concert. The final piece we're going to talk about today is a piece called Dance Fairs by Jess Langston Turner. It was written in 2017, and this piece was chosen and will be conducted on this concert by Mr. Andy Mesterly, who is one of the conductors of our St. Louis Wind Symphony Youth Ensemble. They're going to be performing on a concert with us later this year, and we'll talk more about that as we're leading up to that concert. But Dance Fairs is a really interesting piece. I'm glad he chose it because it's definitely something different from anything else in the program. So Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about like what was, as sort of Andy described it, it involves earworms.
Yeah, so the research that I found on this, it's made up of recognizable and new earworms. So an earworm, if you're not familiar with the term,
Sounds painful.
it's not a parasite, much to what you might be led to believe. So an earworm is actually when you get a song in your head or you get a melody in your head and it won't leave forever and ever. That's referred to as an earworm. So the composer took little snippets that some are original and some are ones that there might be pop songs or whatever that you may have heard that are instantly recognizable and they get in your head. There are a number of them that are in there, not to do spoilers or to give any of them away. The most obvious one, and to me the funniest one, is Jump. Because it's stated, I think, for one of the first times in the piano part, and it's this very open blocked chord classical part for jump.
Van Halen.
Just not what you expect to find in the middle of a wind ensemble piece, but there it is. I'm gonna kick this over to Neil and Jesse so they can talk a little bit about what's happening in the percussion section for this, because there's a lot.
Yeah. So Jess Langston Hughes, right?
Yes.
He is a younger composer, and with being a younger composer, sometimes it does become a challenge to write for an instrument that you might not be familiar with. He uses some editing techniques that we weren't quite familiar with. It was clear that we weren't ready for. Yeah,
The world wasn't ready for it.
Yeah,
The world was
yeah.
not ready.
It was. Matt, you write lots of music, and finale. In order to create the correct sound from a finale, it'll have different types of note heads, and you'll see all sorts of different things. But it sounds correct.
Sure.
But when written on the page, it looks very strange for a percussionist.
Is it the type of thing sometimes you'll look at a written word in English and just go, what is this? And you have to say it out loud
Yes.
a couple of times to
Yes.
figure out what it is. Yeah, that's kind
Well, and then like we talked about earlier, not just selecting the right drumstick or mallet to be using, but is this the correct sound that
they
is coming
want.
from the drum
Sure.
Right.
or coming from the xylophone? So we did have a bit of a challenge trying to decipher what's there after listening to recordings online, which YouTube is probably one of the most helpful tools
What would
when
we
you're
do?
trying to
What would
figure
we
out
do without YouTube?
yeah,
in
when we're
life?
trying to figure out what the composer's intent is, YouTube is kind of a go-to for us, and we've been able to decipher that and split up the parts and make it work in the back of the percussion section.
Yeah,
So.
when I was divvying out the parts, I looked through them and I was like, yeah, one person can play each part, it'll be great. And then once we started getting into it, we realized someone's playing bass drum, but they also have bell set across the room, and like we talk a lot about setting up our little station, like our little pod of instruments around us, and sometimes you just can't do that. When you have a bass drummer and a snare drummer next to each other, you can't really pull the bell set over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we ended up having to split a couple parts out amongst more people.
I know. I had a snare drum / mallet part. And it's an impossibility to do both those. So one of our
Especially when there's a bunch of us back there, we're all
Yes.
tripping over each
Yeah.
other. There's 10 of us now.
so yeah, we've split parts, we've made them work, and those earworms certainly get caught in your head. Yeah, it's been a fun piece though. So
It's one of my worst fears when I look at percussion parts as a band director, and there's one instrument written in two different parts. I'm just like, oh no, like this is not good.
do you
Like,
do do you keep two instruments on
Right.
stage? Because that's that much more space being taken up.
Yes,
Or
right.
can they share?
Yeah.
Can they share? Is it possible? Do they have to cross paths? Or there's literally a physical movement
Yeah.
concern in the back of the stage.
In
so-
November, when we played a movement for Rosa, Neil and I were like fighting over this one
Yes.
suspended cymbal the whole
Yes.
time, and I was like, no, it has to be here because I don't have time to move to this side.
Yeah, no, there was a point where, of course I'm going to listen to my wife, and yes, ma'am,
You should, yes.
yes, ma'am, it's going to stay right over there. And it was only one crash that I had to hit, but I had to walk across stage, hit it, and then leave because we didn't have the access
Sure.
to another instrument. And it wasn't important for me to have my own instrument. I don't know that I had the space for my own instrument either. So
Yeah, you probably don't back then. I do know the composer Daniel Bukvich, in some of his music, he will actually put a diagram in the score
Yes.
of how the percussion section is supposed to be set up, and that, for some pieces, really clarifies just exactly what you guys are talking about. Why is the tom part on percussion 1 and percussion 4?
Right.
Yeah.
And if they have a diagram of how to set it up the way they want it, sound wise, and also logistically how that can work for you guys, that's I feel like that's a skill. That's a composer's skill.
well, it's almost it's kind of there comes a joy in that even as the composer. Yes, the notes on the page can be beautiful, but how is this looking on the stage? And that's very common for percussion ensemble literature. To make sure that you put a diagram in there, so that cueing for the conductor is easier even. But yeah, so a logistical.
That changes for concert too, though, because like
Yes.
in November when we did a movement for Rosa and we all needed a lot of instruments, it was okay to have that set up because the other pieces did not require a lot of instruments. In this concert, we're having to split up parts more because it's really heavy percussion and we don't have time between pieces to reset the stage.
Sure. And
We don't want the audience sitting there like, what are we waiting for? Why is this taking 3 minutes?
I would imagine too, for a composer, if you've got a diagram of how the percussion is supposed to set up, there's some consistency in that every time that piece is performed, it's going to somewhat sound the same because of the proximity of those instruments. So hey, all composers everywhere, give us diagrams about how you want this set up to help out both the percussion section as well as band directors as well as professional wind ensembles.
And by stark contrast, Lisa and I are up in the wind section going, how am I going to get this page turn to work? Like that's our biggest concern is like, how can I guess I'll have to copy this page.
Right.
Shoot.
Well, and I will say when I'm back on piano, I there's more space on the piano to spread things out, so I might be able to put 5 pages, all together, and then my page turns tend to be more dramatic because I have like 5 of them taped together, and I'm like flinging them off to the side. So
either way, it pales in comparison.
It does.
What percussionists have to think about. I'm like, I got my space, I got my instrument, I have one note to read, I'm good.
Yeah.
It's never going to change. All right, so let's listen to a little bit of Jess Langston Turner's Dance Fairs. And that was Dance Fairs by Jess Langston Turner. That's another piece we're going to be performing on our February 9th concert coming up here in just about a week and a half here.
So our concert is on February 9th at 3 o'clock p.m. And our new concert space is the 560 Music Center in U City, and the address of that is 560 Trinity Avenue. You can also check out information about our upcoming concerts and events at our website, which is stlwinsim.org. And of course, we have everything up on all of the social medias, on the Facebooks, on the Twitter feeds, on the Instagram, pretty much everything else. Other stuff we have going on this spring.
Yeah, we've got a busy couple months here. So
Yep.
we've got this concert on February 9th. Coming up shortly after that is the St. Louis Wind Symphony Youth Ensemble is going to start ramping up. We have students coming in for their first rehearsal on February 16th, I believe. So if you're either a high school or college-age student who made your district band, or you're a band director who has students who made their district band in Missouri or Illinois, they are eligible to apply to be in this ensemble. And we can say with relative certainty that that we will take your student because it's a great opportunity. We don't want to turn anybody away. I guess in the off chance that there's like an extreme overabundance of an instrument But I don't think that's ever happened at this point. So, if you've made your district band or your students made a district band, please encourage them to apply for this. It is on our website. The application is there.
It's under, on our website, it's under educational outreach, and then you just click on youth ensemble, and there's information there, and there's a click here to apply online for this upcoming season.
So they would have I believe at the very first rehearsal, they have a little audition that they do. I think they'll get the audition music, and then that just determines chairs and placement and whatnot. And then they rehearse right after the Wind Symphony on Sunday afternoons, and then they're going to do a concert with us on the
March 15th.
March 15th concert. And one of the really cool things is that the youth ensemble is going to be premiering a piece by William Owens, who's a very, very big name composer in sort of the high school level music realm. So they're going to be premiering a piece never been done before, world premiere. And they get to work with Mr. Mesterly that we talked about earlier, and Gary Brandis, who's our associate conductor of the adult Wind Symphony. So this is a really great opportunity, and the best part is it's completely free. It is a public service that the Wind Symphony does for our upcoming young wind musicians. Sort of a pipeline maybe into the Wind Symphony. I don't know. So
Yeah.
it's like our AAA team. So
It's a good way to think about it. And another way to think about it could be, the St. Louis Symphony has the Youth Symphony, and the St. Louis Wind Symphony has the Wind Symphony Youth Ensemble. So it's sort of the same idea. It's the youth orchestra of the band world, I suppose, is what we're heading for there.
yeah.
Something else we have going on this spring is our conducting clinic with Dr. Erica Needlinger. That is happening April 17th and 18th. April 17th and 18th, and it's a Friday night / Saturday morning day sort of thing. You can find information about that on our website. And then our last, two more concerts of our, goodness, now that I'm looking at it, 3 more concerts of our season. We have a shared concert with the Rittner High School Band on April 24th. And then we've also got a Summer Pops concert, an ice cream social with our friends, the Rebellion Handbell Choir on June 14th. And then there's a summer outdoor concert on June 27th. Again, you can find all this information on our website, and also look for us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We have a busy season still, even though we've done quite a bit already. I've really had a good time outlining the different sections that are in the Wind Symphony, just because if you go to the concert, we're all sitting down and we're elevated on a stage. You don't always get like a showcase of what exactly it is that you're.
What do we do now?
That you're looking on. I don't know.
We talk about the conductors, maybe.
I guess we could. I don't
We could go
know.
on for hours.
Yeah.
We could.
Oh, not us.
So much.
You don't want our opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Neil, Jesse, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being
For
here.
having us.
It's always a pleasure to talk percussion and kind of share our side of things with the world. So.
Yes.
And nobody ever asked you guys back there for your opinion.
No, they usually don't want it. So.
It's just stay back there and hit things. It'll
Yeah.
be great.
Black mallet.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Which ones? Yeah. Well, we appreciate your insight, and we appreciate your thoughts on everything that we're doing back there. It's been fun to have you guys.
Thank you.
Any last minute things, Matt? Before
I think we're good. We hope to see you at the February 9th concert, and we'll see you on the next podcast.